Welcome to HR News Podcasts, and my dear guest for today is Rostislav Benák.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Rostia. Rostia, you're the founder of Assessment Systems Group, which is the largest HR consulting or HR capital consulting group in Eastern and Central Europe. What you like to say is that you're the biggest HR capital consulting group from the Baltic to the Adriatic Sea, from the former Iron Curtain to India. Is it correct?
That's exactly correct. Actually, a little bigger, but let's not be too expansive. Yes, that's true. That's correct.
We've known each other for more than 20 years, which is how long your company has been on the market. I know that you studied psychology and you studied business as well. So you like to describe yourself as a business psychologist.
That's true. Yes.
Can you just briefly explain in details for people who have no clue what business psychologist or what human capital consulting company is? Can you describe just in briefly what your services are like?
Okay. So what is business psychology? Whenever you have a human being interacting with organization, then there is a space for a business psychologist. So that's a wide definition, but actually that's correct definition. It comes from selection of personnel, proper decision making when it comes to placements, be it assessment centers, psychometrics, large scale pre-selections, multiple hurdle selections. It also goes forward into onboarding and development, training, coaching, development centers. It goes forward into consulting, personnel audits, maybe the mergers and acquisitions parts when it comes to having two companies but only one set of chairs, efficiency, alignment when it comes to how teams work together, how companies interact, negotiations, appraisals, performance management. All this is part of business psychology. What assessment systems is doing is actually everything except of hard HR. So we don't do financial remuneration and rewarding, but we do everything else which comes to people in organizations.
When you come home in the evening and your kids ask you, Daddy, what you've been doing the whole day, what is your answer?
Actually, that's a good thing. I kept telling them for a very long time that I'm a cleaning lady. That I take my rug and I clean the floor. Actually that's true. I was denying to tell them more because it's very complex. So are you asking about what I'm doing personally, or are you asking what company is doing? What is of your interest?
I guess our today's interview should be aimed more at your personality or your job, or more at Rostia than the company, because I think we've seen a lot of videos about assessment systems, and we can get a lot of information about the company, but today it should be more about you. Okay,
so first of all, I am the strategist. So you see company as it is, I see company as it will be in 5 to 7 years. So basically, I'm living in future a little bit. And it's my task to make it happen, to find it, identify it, explain it to people, define it, and sell it to them. So that's the first part. So that's the strategy part. And very often I'm very lonely in the job because not many people are willing or capable to see things that is to be the harbor where supposedly our ships are going to sail. Second job description element would be I'm the deal maker. I'm the bridge. If there are things which don't match, I'm there to make sure that they would match. So be it a conflict in the team, be it a question mark from a client, be it a large tender where we need to present some things. So that's, or be it a new strategic cooperation, be it a new product design, be it a new change of processes. So I'm there when it comes to changing things and bridging the gaps between people, making sure it works. So maybe you can call it deal maker. Also, my third part of the job would be I am the final resource and the ultimate fireman. So if something cracks and goes wrong, people can go home, people can resign. I don't. So I'm there to stand last, be it financial crisis in 2008, be it COVID in recent years, be it the war in Russia and Ukraine. People can leave, people can resign, people can go away. My job is to stay. So that's the last resource. And maybe the last one is I'm the drummer. I need to make sure that people see sense in what we're doing, that people understand it, that they like it, that it's coordinated, that it works together. I've never thought about it, but actually it feels like these 4 job descriptions would be what I'm doing. Thanks for asking the question. I never thought about it this way.
Maybe now I'm going to give a little bit of a hard time because I know I had a great privilege to interview twice Robert Hogan, who is the guy who got you into business 20 years ago. Part of your products is closely connected with his view of the world, his
Absolutely.
view of business. And what Robert says, there are basically 2 kinds or 2 sides how we perceive ourselves. One is what we think we are, and the other one is what the others think we are, which is, according to Robert, more important.
Yes.
My first question is, because you're a psychologist and you can analyze what you do basically as your own client, if I can describe that, who do you think you are and how do you think the others would describe you?
First of all, I don't know how others describe me, but definitely you can ask them. Second point, I think that it might differ very much based on in what time you ask them, because some people may get impression of myself up on the first sight, which is typically different than when they know me a year, 2 or 3. And it will get yet different when they know me 5 to 10 years, because in such a long time period, typically some things happen that don't happen every day or every year. And the critical incidents in that moment and my performance in that moment and my decisions in that moment may actually alter your perspective, which is midterm. So to make the long story short, I sometimes pay attention that people believe I'm a good guy when they meet me first time. So it's kind of a social role. By the way, not always. When it comes to my coaching clients, I on the contrary, I try to be very open from the very beginning. And that's why they actually come. Midterm, they probably think I'm terrible because I'm more open, I'm more straightforward, and I'm more direct, and we play less of social games, and I'm more demanding when it comes to deliverables. And my experience is that long-term, they appreciate more again that the long-term stability, some decisions, integrity, and keeping the word is something that they understand they can rely on. That's what I believe they believe.
I can add my point of view or my
okay. Please do. Should I be worried?
Because what I perceive is that you're in the situation where you are the true leader, and I'm not trying to describe if good or bad, but you're a leader because you're at the top of your company, because there are no other owners of the company. You are the manager and the owner of the company. So this is, at least from my point of view, this is the pure leadership, because if you mess up, you mess up. If you do something great, you do something great. It's, of course, it's not just about Rostia, it's about the whole organization.
Of course.
But as Bob described, you have only two things to do in leadership. You must get along with the people in the organization, and you must go ahead.
Get ahead.
Comparing to your competition. Do you think you're better in getting along? It means are you a good manager in terms of managing the people in your organization and trying to set up the organization to work as a team? Or do you think are you more a visionary person? If I'm to be correct, for example, Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, they might be great visionaries, they might be great strategists, but a lot of times we hear that they are really sometimes toxic for the organization. So my question would be, do you think from your point of view a good manager or better visionary?
I understand. First of all, let me add a third ingredient. It's not only about getting along and getting ahead. It's also about providing a meaning. Okay. So if you're leading an organization, you have to make sure that you stay on the top to be able to lead it, which is getting ahead. It's also about winning over your competition. Otherwise, you are deselected from the gene pool. But to be able to do so with people long term, you need to provide them with the meaning of what your organization, team, or tribe is doing. As per your question, I strongly believe that my weakest point always used to be the leadership inside. So rather than getting along with people, that I probably didn't pay enough attention to as some of the people would love to or would love me to. But since we are where we are, and since we grew the way we grew, and since we are continuing, no matter how many crises were there or unexpected happenings in the world, and we are still continuing to grow, I believe we are a successful organization, even on the international field. In this respect, I believe I'm good enough in getting ahead. And since people keep following, I strongly believe that providing the meaning is something which I'm acceptably fine in. When it comes to getting along with people, you quoted Bob, let me quote him as well. One of his saying is, if you want to be loved, get yourself a dog. You are not on the top leadership position to be loved. In many corporate organizations, I sometimes call it the rectal alpinism, becomes very strong. So once you're promoted, you have more friends on LinkedIn. People start laughing to your jokes during the meetings much more than they did before. All of a sudden, everybody wants to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. That's social politics. Some leaders in organizations which they probably don't own are good at playing politics. I had bigger priorities to do than playing politics inside my organization. My priority was to make sure we survive and to make sure we keep growing. And I did not always have time for internal politics. So some people left. And in some cases, I'm sorry for some of the things I've done in the past because I should have been nicer. Last few years, I'm fairly convinced, also based on the feedback or on retention, let me quote it, that I'm good enough and acceptable enough leader for getting along with others. People keep enjoying it and they keep staying.
Your role is, in eyes of many, maybe a little more difficult because you have to manage a lot of countries. You use in your company 14 languages, if I'm correct, 10 different currencies.
True.
How many countries from maybe all the continents?
Not all the continents. We don't have a business unit in the Americas, but unless and Australia. But unless otherwise, we have more than we have business units in more local legal entities in more than 10 countries. That's true. Yes, and we are daily delivering in 14 languages. That's also true. I was just checking before our interview. This year so far, we've invoiced into 31 countries, and not all the businesses are invoiced to the country where you deliver it because they are kind of cluster delivered. So we are regularly delivering to 50 countries. That's also true. And yes, it is fairly multinational.
Because it's quite unique because you have an international product.
Yes.
It's your choice to open new countries. I believe there's nobody that's making you do that. It's based on solely your decision, or isn't it?
Kind of. So I can open an office wherever I want. That's true.
Exactly.
But I don't always get the rights or licenses to distribute some third-party products as I would wish. There are limits to it, of course. So I can open an office in Antarctica and be developing penguins, but I don't think they would give me a license for that.
Well, my question was, what is your motivation? Because you easily could have stayed in the Czech Republic or
True.
just the neighboring countries, but you decided to expand. You've decided to open new branches. Why do you do that?
I often ask that question to myself too. No, seriously. I like to grow, and I like challenges. Sometimes I keep joking, my first name, Rostislav, that in translation into Latin means crescens, basically the one who celebrates the growth. So I like to growth. I'm living my name, as many of us do. So I like to grow things. I like to grow people as a coach and as a facilitator and as a trainer. I love to see clients with whom I work that they keep growing. And I also like to see the organization in which I'm working that it's growing. So I like meaningful growth and providing more positive impact and benefits into meaningful places. And then the question is, what's a meaningful place? So yes, we did start in Czech Republic. Ever since the very beginning, we were already active in Slovakia very early. We grew over in neighboring countries, be it Poland, Romania, Hungary, Ukraine, Russia. Later also Kazakhstan, etc., etc. Later we built an organization, international management level, and local offices. So that's where the complexity came from. What gives me growth? So let me answer you business-wise. Places in Central and Eastern Europe are actually so small that scalability is difficult. Also, quality is difficult. Imagine some of the small Balkan countries. You know, a couple of million inhabitants, slightly different language every 300 kilometers, different currency. How great do you think would the CEO of the largest local office would be? And now imagine Germany, not 2.5 million people like in Slovenia, for example, or 7 like somewhere else. You have 80 million people market. You have bigger benchmarks, you have bigger demands, you have bigger competition, and the same job would have A, much smaller scope, much bigger scope, and B, you have much bigger selection opportunity to get the right candidate. And this quality and quantity is actually interconnected. So if we wanted to be running a large business, I needed to unite the markets into a bigger chunk. I was not born in India, neither in the United States, nor in UK, nor in Germany. I was born in a relatively fairly small Czech Republic. I love the place, by the way. Don't take me wrong, but continuing growth, my first step was, okay, let's do something a little bigger. Let's unite more markets together. So assessment systems, actually, since the beginning, was more interconnected than European Union itself. Seriously, we have one language, that's English. Yes, everywhere we are delivering in local languages, but everything inside the company is done in English. Be it product trainings, be it reporting, be it management meetings, be it anything you name it, even accounting. We're doing everything in English. And this gives us more quantity, which brings more quality, because we can benchmark internationally ourselves. So that's one perspective, operation. The other perspective is a business volume. If you take Czech Republic, there is only 10 million inhabitants. There is only a certain GDP, and therefore it defines a certain size and scope of projects that you can run. If you are capable to provide an added value to a foreign global provider or foreign corporate customer who wants to run something globally, then A, you get to much bigger quality projects, and B, if you are uniting markets together, you have a much stronger value proposition, because from one point of contact via one language interaction, you can disseminate the projects into 14 countries in 14 languages, take care of 10 different accounting currencies, and make sure it's culturally adequate, make sure it's locally accepted, but according to global standards. So actually, by doing so, I created an opportunity for much more interesting projects, for much more interesting deliveries, things that, and types of projects you would never be able to do in Czech Republic itself, because they just don't exist. You don't transform large companies in a small market, but you do transform large companies in a large region, and that gives much more fun. So I love the job. It gives fun. It gives a lot of interesting interactions. It gives you learnings you would never get locally. And to be honest, I also have one more private motivation. I seriously love challenges. So I love cracking nuts, which are hard to crack. So in my private time, I like doing survival racing, when for many hours you have 15 disciplines to fulfill during day and night. And I'm just enjoying to go beyond the point where you cannot go, because then you work differently, your mind works differently, you discover new things about yourself. And a lot of challenges in business have so far been exactly the same survival race. You never thought you would be able to make it, but you have to, or at least I want to. So that's a personal hobby.
Well, your company can be easily described as a human capital consulting company, but on the other hand, it's quite, as I understand correctly, data-driven. You test a lot of people, you get a lot of information, and it does really make sense if you use it in a large scale and if you test in large scale. How does it look like in the real world? How many, or what kind of data do you collect from either personal profiles, companies, assessment centers, and how do you work with the data to bring benefit for your clients?
Okay. My answer would be very different before GDPR and after GDPR. So before GDPR, we actually collected anything and everything. Be it personality profile, we linked your personality profile with, for example, your social network profiles. So if you remember the case of Cambridge Analytica, a big case, I think it was 2017, if I'm correct, when they were influencing the elections based on the personality profiles and providing messages to people based on how they typologize them. We were capable to predict your personality profile, if you want your Hogan results, based on your LinkedIn profile. We had hard data that allowed us to predict and map these things. So we could be making decisions about yourself based on Hogan profile before you even clicked Hogan profile for us. We were capable to run decision-making based on your future talent perspective, based on how you would be perceived by others, based on what would be your personality predictors, etc., etc., etc. This was heavily trimmed after GDPR. So no longer we are running such research or such fun projects, so to say. Today we're only working with data sets that customers want us to have about their employees. So research is fairly limited in this regard. So we are, as an example, before the GDPR, we were sweeping up things and making sure we are completely aligned. So back there in 2018, we had far more than 100, I think, and 50 or 80,000 profiles of individual people in Central and Eastern Europe. So basically we had the whole management population. That's basically completely anonymized. So we have benchmarks about industries, we have benchmarks about different positions, we have country benchmarks, we can compare leadership styles between Western Europe, Eastern Europe, Far Eastern Europe, if you like, Middle East, but it's no longer connected to the individuals.
What kind of benefits can you actually bring from such a huge bulk of data? Because it's not only to have the data, the other most important thing is to utilize the data to bring benefits to your customers.
Yes.
What kinds of products or services do you derive from utilizing this data?
Ultimately, first of all, it's awareness. It's awareness of who I am. You can even call it strategic awareness. On individual level, who I am, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, how do I differ from others, where do I fit, where I don't fit. On the team level or company level, we're bringing awareness in terms of industry benchmarks. Are we stronger than them? How do we differ from the best ones in the class? What are we missing? Maybe we have some blind spots that we are unwilling to address. So it is, again, strategic awareness. It's also on the corporate level. Who are the best successors? Rarely it's the social stars who are rectal alpinists. These are most loved, but they are not always the best ones to be promoted. So who is really the best successor that will bring our company to the next decade? That's the first level, strategic awareness. If you get this, you've already won your day. However, many companies want more. Based on awareness, they also want to make right decisions. So based on the awareness we bring, they prefer decisions of what to do with the team, or who to hire, or who to fire, or shall we build on this? Shall we develop him, or instead let's forget development and let's only focus on retention? We've been long-term on the market. Many customers actually return to us after some time. We have gained a reputation that we are providing the feedback no matter how brutal the truth is. So it happened to us several times that we stood firm with our recommendation to the company, which was against the preference of the top management. And we told them, hey guys, if you want to do it a certain way, you are fully free to do it. It's your company, it's your responsibility. But if you pay us for our recommendation, we will not just say what you like to hear, because that would not be what we believe is a good job. So often, not too often, but fairly, probably more often than competition, fairly often, we go against what is desired to be heard. And sometimes we receive phone calls saying, hey, do you remember what you told us 2 years ago? That exactly happened. We went the other way, but you were right. Can you come back and fix it? Can you come back and fix our wrong decision? And we trust you because your recommendation was correct. So that's what I love about it. And that's what data gives you. You can be more reliable on what is ultimately the best possible true we are capable to discover than what your illusions, beliefs, or biased opinions, no matter how good, can actually be. So it helps you make better decisions.
This is exactly what Bob Hogan says. There are good news in good news. Actually, if you get and consultants usually like to give, especially corporations, good news because they are paid to bring you good news. Yeah. Where do you think you're really, and which fields of your services do you think you're really competitive, really strong against your competition, and where do you think you might get better actually?
Okay, so when it comes to psychometrics, I am strongly convinced we are the largest, and sorry for not being humble enough, but the best psychometrical provider in Central and Eastern Europe. It's not only about Hogan. Hogan is one of maybe 100, 120 methods that we're providing. We also have very specific niche methods when it comes to visual spatial perceptions or determination tests, reaction times, etc. So when we are talking about pilots or fast cars drivers, be it all those with blue light on the roof, ambulances, police, military, blah, blah. In some countries, no driver can become a driver of such a privileged car before they would go through something which is provided by our teams locally. So that's beautiful. That's what I enjoy, that it's kind of a niche specialty. And yes, we work with Hogan because Hogan works. We would work with something different if Hogan was not at that time the highest regarded tool on what's out there in psychometrics. So only afterwards we became friends with Bob Hogan. I'm not saying they're good because we're friends. We're friends because they're good. It's the opposite direction. So psychometrics is one thing. Second thing, we're called assessment systems. Whether it's a good name or not, many people believe we're doing assessment centers. So yes, we run hundreds, actually thousands of those. So we are, I strongly believe, ultimately very good in those, and we're doing it for in different places, different countries, different customers, even for governmental or state bodies in multiple countries, even past elections and across other elections. So obviously we're doing something good that different parties like to work with us when it comes to development. And we've run assessment centers above and beyond Polar Circle and elsewhere. Third area, non-corporate customers would probably recognize Assessment Systems brand as the one of the largest provider of employee assistance services in Central and Eastern Europe. This means you have a psychologist on phone or an advisor in financial area or legal area or social area. So key employees of large companies have got an opportunity for themselves or their families to have, a friend online 24/7. We're a very large provider of that one. CEOs would know us as their strategic management advisor when it comes to how to align the teams, what's the proper way to do the personnel audit, the mergers and acquisitions, as I mentioned, leadership development. Ultimately, leadership development is something that we're very strongly regarded by executive population. Where we are not as strong, maybe traditional training and development. One of my bad decisions was I decided to dump it back there in 2012. I decided it's dead. Traditional training and development is so old, outdated. Things can be done online, remote, e-learning, mentoring programs on the job. So I decided we dump it. So we stopped providing it to customers. And guess what? We couldn't. They kept coming back. They kept requesting it. They kept, asking for it, no matter we were not offering it. And I realized that since it's budgeted for years, it will be there again next year. So they will want it again, and they will maybe hide there something slightly different, but they still want it. So we stopped focusing on it, and we are actually very strong in this only in selected segments, be it leadership and people management and HR professional skills. But we're generally, we've left this training area a decade ago based on my bad decision. I felt it's no future anymore.
Okay. One of the key terms and key issues is corporate leadership. Mm-hmm. This is what your company does, that you either consult and you provide services connected with training leaders, helping companies select or hire good leaders. Mm-hmm. You've been on the market for more than 20 years. How is it about leadership? Every organization wants to have a good leader. We have seen not what good or bad leaders can do with not only organizations, but with the whole countries. Yes. We can see it today in the news every day.
Yes.
How can you get a good leader for a team, for an organization, for a country?
It's not that easy, and that's why it means a lot of job for us. So first of all, you have to have certain talents or certain gifts, but you have to be developing yourself, and you have to be developed. And it's great that you have, if you have a mentor or examples to learn from. So good leaders, you don't find them on the street. You have to be searching for them. You have to select talents. You have to develop talents. And half of them will anyway run away or die on the way. So it is a hard job. I'm not quite sure what exactly are you asking about?
Well, I was actually asking if you can, for example, if I were a client and came to you and I was asking, okay, we have 1,000 people.
Yep.
We would like you to help us to, for long term, help identify, select, hire. Good leaders or good potential leaders within our organization. It means not hiring someone from the outside. We would like to identify potential talents, leaders. Is this something you like to do? You can do.
Absolutely.
You can use your profiles or any tools you have. And the other one is, can you help us train good leaders? Or if we don't have potential good leaders within the organization, can you help us hire the people from the outside?
Not the last thing. We do not provide candidates. By a strategic decision, we do not provide candidates because we're working basically with, sorry to say, but everybody. Before the war in Russia, we had more than 1,000 corporate clients. I mean, active corporate clients whom we were invoicing in any calendar year. Now it's somewhat less. We downsized a lot, all the Eastern operation. It's now about 800 corporate clients who we are invoicing every year. The total pool would be more than 5,000. So basically, we work with everyone. And should we ever steal a good client from one client, a good leader from one client, and place them into a different company, that would be a tremendous death for ourselves. I mean, our integrity is extremely strong. We very often know many information before market knows them, etc. We've never leaked an information, and we've never betrayed a corporate client by sucking out their key person for our fee into elsewhere. So we do not provide candidates from outside. If you have your candidate pool, our job, we're happily screening them. That's a different story. But you have to attract your candidates yourself. Back to your question about leadership. So first of all, what is leadership? Sometimes it's...
Let's see, what is good long-term leadership? Because sometimes you have
yes.
leaders that are good just for 3, 4, 5 years.
Yes.
And after 10 years, you see that they completely screwed up.
Yes.
So what would be the prerequisites to choose a good long-term leader?
Yeah. So first of all, there are huge textbooks on what is leadership, and you basically get a picture that it's a superpower mega soldier that can do everything. Such thing does not exist. Well, it does, but only in fairy tales. Leadership, I love the definition that it's the ability to build and maintain a long-term well-performing team. So it's not about your ultimate capabilities. It's about your capability to build the perfect team or long-term well-performing team. This means you cannot have, I believe you cannot have an ideal leader. Those don't exist. I believe you can have ideal team. And that's a different story. So from this perspective, promoting best performers on a certain corporate hierarchy level often means you lose the best performer and you gain a wrong team leader. That's, a paradox. Because if a small child tells a joke, adults laugh. A kid likes to repeat the joke, right? You repeat what works well. And then the child is unhappy that adults no longer laugh again when the joke is repeated. And exactly the same thing happened to overwhelming majority of team leaders. When you're promoted because you're good at what you're doing, you try to do more of it, and that's wrong. You cannot be successful with continuing your previous job on your higher position. So often leadership is about what you stop doing and what you start doing as a new thing, and what you stop doing as the old thing. That's what making leadership promotions difficult. Yes, you can identify prerequisites, and yes, you can help them grow the right way, just like you put a pole to the ground when you plant a tree so that the tree grows strongly and firmly straight upwards. But you have to help the tree, but the tree has to grow itself. That's the same metaphor.
Actually, are you born as a leader, or can you educate someone to become a leader, or train someone to become a leader?
That is an extremely important question, whether it's nature or nurture.
Is it the personality matters, or
yes.
if you can train the person to be a leader?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Both.
I'm sorry. Both. I hate this answer, but it is both. So you are born with certain prerequisites. You have to be smart. Sorry, Bob Hogan doesn't like that, but you have to be smart. If you're not clever, you won't make it. Bob Hogan doesn't prefer talking about intellect, but it is ultimately important. Point 2, you have to be able to work hard to learn things and make yourself through. You can learn some things. You cannot learn much of the intellect, but you can learn experience. You can learn from others. You don't have to repeat all the mistakes yourself. You can learn from mistakes of others, because mistakes is the best way to learn from. You have to have your own motivation. That's something that we cannot give from outside. So sometimes we have fantastic candidates who are best fitting leaders, but if they're not motivated, sorry, I'd rather go with one-eyed person who really loves to see than two-eyed person who just doesn't care seeing. Motivation is of an ultimate importance. So when it comes to leaders, it is both. You're born with some elements of it, but it has to be educated. Look at real world. Often you have a population which you have. Sometimes you have to live with what you have. No matter how miserable the team could be, there is still one who is the best leader, and that person shall be in charge and make sure that the others survive with him. We often see it in very small markets. In the Balkans, we were once selecting a CEO for a local office of a huge multinational corporation. I was giving a call to the regional CEO later and saying, well, I understand it's difficulty, but in such a small market, you really don't get best candidates. Guess what? That person was selected CEO. Now that client of mine is actually a premier of the country. He would fail in Germany. He would fail on a 50+ million market. But in such a small country, you have no other choice. And the best one you have is the one who has to do it. So
I 100% agree, because sometimes you need to work with what you have.
Exactly.
And if you read the job descriptions on the job portal, sometimes you wonder, because the requirements that you sometimes see or read on the job descriptions, they would require everybody to become a superhero right away, because, it's unreal.
That's exactly impossible. So you have to, often it's the art and science of what is real and what's possible. So you can have, ideal pictures, but reality is such that you have to live with what you have. And often you have to find the right way using what you have.
You work in many different countries with different cultures, with completely different maybe requirements for the leaders. Or are the requirements different from country to country? We see in the Czech Republic that we have a team manager from Denmark for Sparta Prague, which would be impossible maybe 10 years ago.
Yep.
And it works. It seems to work. Is it the same in business, where can you actually parachute somebody from Germany to be as good manager in Balkan countries or in India or in Africa? Or do you need to really think about the local specific values or culture, or does it actually vary from country to country or region to region? Or can you say, if you're a good manager, if you have the right personality, you can take the business Jose Mourinho from England and put him to Africa and he still be successful and win?
I strongly believe it's not the case. So parachuters are not in most cases successful. Some parachuters definitely are, but they need to be carefully selected. So the first thing, culture, be it company culture and be it country culture, both is important. Some cultures just don't match together too well. If you look at Russia before the war, there were very few foreign nationalities who were capable to be successful as an expatriate leader in that country. Surprisingly, Czech expatriates used to have a very strong track record there, because somehow culturally we were capable to understand their perspective, as well as we were capable to understand the perspective of the Western world. And some of the leaders were very capable in translating the needs of both sides and helping to find the right bridge. So that is something that qualifies, maybe, or used to qualify leaders from this place where, depending on what part of history you looked at, either Russians came or Germans came. So you had to find your living with both. So culture does matter. Industry matters. There was a big movement, 70s, maybe 80s, probably 80s more, when you had this general belief that MBA leaders are universal leaders of any business anywhere globally, and they know it all because there is this generalized knowledge of how to run a business empire. Pardon my French, bullshit. It took a decade to learn that's not true. You have to understand the substance of what you're doing, at least in a way. So people who are from energy sector stay with energy, be it, coal, nuclear, gas, be it distribution, production, whatever, you stay with your industry. It's the same if you're a machinery engineer, you'll be best at managing machinery engineering thing because you have to understand the substance. If you're from financial industry, banking, you're typically more successful to be in banking than in IT. If you're IT, you can be IT, but still you should understand IT. So that's something which is relatively expensive knowledge. That MBA is not sacrificing or self-solving everything. Culture matters. You have to match things.
Values?
National culture is often having a lot to do with values. So definitely, you can be a wonderful pharmaceutical professional, but if you're working on chemical weapons, you'll be less successful than if you're working on producing healthcare substances. So yes, values definitely matter a lot. I mean, some people can do wonderful marketing, but they would never work for a tobacco company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So values are tremendously important. They are invisible. They are often not understood on the very first moment. Competencies are. Values far less often are in the scope of what's being assessed. And that's a pity, because competencies may make you succeed. Lack of value match may cause your failure later on.
Looking at what are the big topics in maybe in the Western society comparing to the Eastern society, and let's speak about DI, let's speak about managers' integrity, because it's completely different in what the trends are in maybe the United States, Western Europe, and what's going on in the Eastern countries or Eastern part of the world. How can you work with these maybe sometimes even clashes of values or trends? Because I believe it must be extremely difficult, and we see it in the Czech society. If we start speaking about diversity, equality, inclusion, how people understand that it's like a wave that's going from the West to the Czech countries, and we absolutely have no clue how to deal with these issues. So how do you work as a human consultancy team to handle this?
Interesting question. Very interesting question. So first of all, let's look at maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 15 years ago. It has always been the fact that the trends were somehow started, typically in Anglo-American business environment, somehow adopted in Western Europe, later in Eastern Europe, and later in Eastern Europe, and so on. It was like it. This speed is much bigger these days. So if there is something new in those countries of development, it's basically almost immediately here. Talking about AI, I strongly believe that that's the same thing, no matter where. It's identical immediately. There is no time gap. When it comes to DEI, like diversity, equality, this is something where the wave goes very quickly as well. It used to be adopted differently. Here in Central and Eastern Europe, we used to be working under desired reality, which was different from real reality. That was something which in Western world has not been the case. So when we were pushed into a certain direction, we were worried that it means something else. And we were worried that we need to demonstrate something, but in reality it will be different, such as positive discrimination. I'm a strong disbeliever in positive discrimination. I can accept it had its place maybe in 70s, maybe in 60s, when it started as a concept. I strongly believe that it makes no space today.
Because it was a really big problem. If you were on a bus in the United States in the 60s, the Afro-American people were sitting
absolutely
at a certain place, and it was a big issue.
And this is completely wrong. And to fix this, you needed to live with a positive discrimination for maybe a decade, 2 or 3. But maybe I'm romantic, but I believe that this is no longer the case here. And from my perspective, the diversity, equality, and inclusion thing is to be presented more from practical benefits than from political demands. And practical benefits is, if you have a diverse team, it is more productive than you have one colored team. If you are not willing to include people who are from different ethnics or different countries, then you're actually missing a major part of a labor force that is no longer here on the market. So you need someone else. So let's look at it from, without prejudices, from practical perspective. It is actually beneficial to do it this way. Not because EU decided, but if you think about it until the very end, it's very beneficial. And if you do it, you'll have a benefit. If you don't do it, you're only shooting yourself into your own leg.
Let's move a little bit forward. Artificial intelligence, it's a big issue today. how is it going to influence your business? Because you, as I mentioned before, your data-driven business, artificial intelligence is made to work with data.
Yep.
What is going to change in your business in the future?
It's definitely going to influence. It has already influenced, and it will continue influencing furthermore. To make the long story short, so the knowledge business or advisory business will be influenced more by AI than maybe other types of businesses. So I think that in our industry, we will see biggest changes. Someone will suffer, someone will grow, but changes will be the biggest. I'm strongly convinced. We have already, back in spring 23, implemented several products, AI-based or AI supported. But we have to be very careful. I mean, when in spring 23, I talked with ChatGPT for the first time, and I was asking about assessment systems. They were, among others, telling me that it's an anonymous, large multinational corporation who has a non-public owner and is based in Luxembourg. None of it was true. Yes, we are large, but we are not in Luxembourg, and we're not anonymous, and blah, blah. So sometimes it's fabulating, and you have to be very careful. So when we have a product, for example, the competency mapping tool, we have strictly defined 4 gates in which a senior consultant has to keep fingers on pulse and has to make a conscious decision of whether left or right. However, using this product, a 2-day job, analytical job, can be squeezed down in less than a quarter of a day. AI can do huge amounts of work without being tired in a certain level of quality, but it has to be watched. So from my perspective, it will be here, it will stay here. As you know, I'm a keen coach. I've been coaching since basically end of last century. And I'm also the founding member of Czech Coaching Association, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the global coaching conferences, I had a chance to see, explore, and play with an AI robot for coaching. I'm very picky. I'm very highly demanding on my people's quality work, and I'm rarely happy. I had to admit that this ChatGPT-based robot was extremely good. Was probably better than most of the coaches you would see out there on the street. It will replace us. In many elements, it will replace us. That particular robot which I'm talking about has actually been produced by a company that was in the industry not since last year, but for maybe 7 years. So they played with it, with machine learning, for quite a long time. But their product was able to gain accreditations and certifications to a certain level. It did not get the master certification because it was incapable of self-reflection. So basically the engine was not having emotions, which is one of the parts that you need for self-reflection. Wait a minute. What is this? This is exactly identical to psychopaths. And if you consider psychopaths, we are talking about a kind of a disorder. Psychopath has got a different hardware inside your skull than an ordinary person, and you cannot recognize it on the street. You can recognize it under, nuclear resonance or positron tomography, etc., etc. But on the street, you don't recognize it. In the boardroom, you don't recognize it. But what we know is that the percentage of psychopaths in executive positions is about 10 times higher than in ordinary population.
And yet still you can have positive psychopaths.
Exactly.
Because sometimes it's under pressure in war, and for surgeons, you require a person without sweat or nerves.
You need that. I mean, psychopaths can be extremely valuable as a special unit force people because they can stay calm in a difficult moment. They don't have to be musculars, etc., as the popular cinematography likes to present. No, if you look at these psychopaths in boardrooms, they have obviously something which qualifies them to do the job better. That's why they are there so much more frequent than in other jobs. And if you think about psychopaths from this perspective, it's actually very similar to how AI differs from a human being. Mm-hmm. I know it's a brutal simplification, but there is this trend. So looking at the development from longer perspective, we are the last species on this planet, but definitely other developments will come. We as Homo sapiens are probably not the last ones. And there are some voices saying that maybe psychopaths will be the next developmental stage. Maybe not. I don't know what will be there, but I know that the development will continue and we are not the ultimate peak of everything. It will just go on.
Kirsia?
Yes.
We have last question. We often read in the books that learning the past helps us to predict the future. What would be your prodigy, and how do you think what's going to happen in the next 10, 15, maybe 20 years in your field of business? It means working with people, HR, human consultancy. But even in choosing the leaders and to establishing the right teams, what would be the trends in your opinion?
Okay, depends on how long or short you want this. To make the long story short, nothing much will change because people will be needed. The alignment of them with organizations or inside the teams will always be needed. Problems will need to be fixed. So ultimately, why we are here will not disappear. So our industry will stay. On the other hand, the form of what and how it will be done will develop, just as it is developing today, from pen and paper psychometrics to computerized testing. Maybe psychodiagnostics will not be needed because AI will take care of it, etc., etc. We talked about development from Anglo-American world. Let's look at the development from the Southeast Asia. I mean, in banking world and in other areas, newest innovations are there. In telecommunication, newest innovations are there, not in US. So maybe let's look there, what will come, because they are ultimately on the top of the developments in some of the areas. When looking into how the world is developing, I am actually foreseeing that our children will live in a very different world than in which we grew up. If you look at the major disruptors of the past decades, we can understand the human development as the capability of mankind to collect energy or accumulate energy and information, which is, another form of energy. So a big development started when we settled and started producing, grains, then book printing, then, steam engine, then maybe, mobile phones, then internet, now AI. I strongly believe that during lives, we will see one more such disruptor at least. And my understanding is that such disruptor, unlike what's happening on the energy stock exchange, I strongly believe that we will foresee a surplus of a much cheaper and cleaner energy than has been here so far. Maybe it will be nuclear fusion, maybe other formats of development, but I believe we will live long enough to see the impact of a redundant or abundant supply of energy, which will democratize many resources for many people on this planet. No matter, it will not be free, it will not be for everyone, but it will make our movement much further.
So you believe the Green Deal is not the last deal we are going to...
I think that... Wait a minute. It's yet a different story. I think that Green Deal is a great philosophy with completely miserable implementation. I think it does make sense to keep the planet clean, yes, but for God's sake, not the way as it was approved. Because if we took the same costs that Green Deal as defined would be on our side to carry it, we would be able to be far more efficient in achieving the goals because, planet doesn't have borders. If you're looking at where is the biggest emission of greenhouse gases, it's no longer the exhaust pipes of European cars. Forget that. It's even not the energy production in Europe. It's fires in Canada, or it's fires in Siberia, or it's exhalations from different parts of the world. If we took the same money that Green Deal would cost us, and we would allocate it properly to help planet become cleaner from our garbage, we would be far more efficient and far more effective doing it differently. And I think that So from this perspective, Green Deal might have a good vector, but completely wrong implementation from my side. But I'm also a strong believer that the transformation of the world will go on, and it's not about inflation, it's not about crisis, it's not about wars locally. These are probably long-term all negligible. I also don't think that the global warming will be a major issue. I think that a change of biodiversity and the dying out of species, which is happening now as quickly as it was unforeseen in billions of years of history since life emerged on this planet. So I'm afraid that our grandchildren will inevitably live in a completely different world. However, people issues will still be there. So what we're doing will be still meaningful. No matter the world will be most likely completely different, because of biodiversity different, food production different, fight for water, resources, another thing.
So the good news for our listeners is that HR consulting and HR services will be still needed in the future?
Yes, I'm a romantic believer that human species will survive, so we will need to take care of ourselves. That's true.
Okay, Rostislav, it was a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much, and I look forward to meeting you and cooperating with you.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure. Great day to everyone.